Hi, welcome back. I am so excited today to have one of my very dearest friends, Dr. Princess Thomas, on the show. Princess had a big dream when she was just a little girl to become a doctor and ultimately a surgeon. You know, as we've all experienced in some way, big dreams often don't come easy. And in Princess's case, there were a whole lot of obstacles. But her story is such a story of hope. She was encouraged to dream big and never give up by her grandmother, whom she says was the strongest woman she's ever known. And then there was a doctor in her small southern town of Columbus, Georgia, who also nurtured her dreams and mentored her in the most generous of ways. Join us today as we step into this first episode of a great, powerful story. Hey, Princess, I'm so glad to be with you here today.
Hi,
Hi,
how are
Dr.
you?
Princess. So excited to have you with us today, and we can't wait to dive in and ask you all the questions.
Okay, so Princess, we talked about this when we were talking earlier. When did you decide you wanted to be a doctor? What motivated that?
I was about maybe 5 or 6 years old the first time I muttered those words. And I'll be honest, and my long term memory is not great. I remember a lot of things like right now, but like the first thing that I remember, dating back to when I said, okay, I wanted to be a doctor is it was just very interesting because a lot of kids, when they were going to the doctor because they had to get their vaccines or they had to get their checkups before school, they would be scared and everybody's crying and I don't want to get a shot. But I just remember never being scared, right? And I'm like, I like to go to the doctor. What is wrong with y'all?
You were curious. But did anybody say to you, like your mom or your grandmom or anybody
Yeah.
in your circle, did anybody say, baby, that's great, but, or baby, that's maybe that's not going to work for you? I mean,
No.
you weren't in a household that had the money to send you to medical school,
Right.
but they fostered that dream, right?
Absolutely. There was never a person, whether it was my mother, my grandmother, my grandfather, my uncle, no one ever said, oh, no, that's too far fetched. That's crazy. Why would you do that? Or I don't know. What's your plan B? Those words were never said. It was okay. You want to be a doctor? You telling me you want to be a doctor? All right, we're doing our homework before you go outside and play after school. You're going to have to put action to your words. But it was never questioned.
Princess, when you were growing up and you wanted to be a doctor, were you exposed to any African American doctors? Did you know anybody that was African American and was a doctor? Was there anybody in your circle, your family?
I had two mentors growing up, both of which I shadowed, and one was an African American male, Dr. Alonzo Jones in Columbus, Georgia, and he's still practicing. He's a cardiologist.
Oh, wow.
And then Dr. Philip Brewer, he was a cardiothoracic surgery, so everybody was heart centered, right? And he was a Caucasian older gentleman. So I had a little bit of both. I didn't have any females, but I did have, a cardiologist that was, like I said, he was an African American, and Dr. Brewer, and he ended up being the one that fostered me or kind of pushed me into the field of surgery.
And I love that story. I didn't know that you also had an African American mentor who, um,
Mhm.
you know, helped you in, kind of guide you as well as Dr. Brewer. But
Right.
so you did have, I guess what we're trying to look for is how gorgeous is it that you had both an African American doctor and a white doctor who were encouraging you and helping you dream this into reality. Will you
Right.
tell us the story? I think you were 8 years old and you went to the doctor with your grandmother, Dr. Brewer.
Mhm. Right.
Tell
Right.
tell us that story. I love the story. Make it long. It's like my bedtime story.
Okay. So I think I'm pretty sure I was maybe late middle school thereabout. But I went with my great grandmother who actually would have turned 105 a couple of days ago.
Oh.
She passed in 2019. But I was going to the doctor with her. She was seeing Dr. Philip Brewer. Once again, he was a cardiothoracic surgeon because she had some plaque in her arteries in her neck. And so he was seeing her for that, and he, did his subsequent workup and all the things and determined that she needed surgery. In the meantime, this doesn't happen over one doctor's visit, right? So, I went with her to several of those visits, and he went out of his way to ask me, a young Black girl just sitting in there with her great grandma, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Because a lot of people are like, well, I don't know, but I want to be a doctor. And he's like, oh, okay. And then he took it up a notch. He's like, well, what kind of doctor? And I'm like, I don't know. I thought that was a good enough answer, right?
I love that you had so many people that encourage you. That
Yes.
it doesn't sound like you had people that were like, oh no, you're a woman, or no, you're Black, oh no, we don't have the money. It was like you were so blessed with so many people in your surrounding, even the people that were not your family, they believed in you.
Yeah, absolutely. So continue
Absolutely.
the Dr. Brewer story. Sorry we interrupted.
No, you're fine. And he said, well, have you thought about surgery? When he said that, I said, well, I hadn't thought about that, sir. And he said, well, why don't you come follow me in the operating room? And I was like, okay.
My goodness.
I'm like, and I didn't know I didn't know that meant that I'm going to see someone's chest get cracked open because he does open heart surgeries.
And you're only in middle school. I mean, you're what, 11, 12?
Yeah, like not that far out from being a candy striper. You know what I mean? And so it's like, well, okay. Like, all right, now, excuse my language, it's time to go balls to the wall now, like he's like, let's go to surgery. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So fast forward, we go to surgery, and I mean, just the simple things that, if you're not in that arena, you don't know, you have to put on a hat, you have to put on a mask, you have to put on shoe cover, you have to do all these things. And this is honest. I mean, this is way pre-COVID. No one is used to walking around with a mask on.
Right.
Nor do you think about, you have on a mask, so you're breathing this recirculated air that's just going in and out of this mask. And honestly, it's something to get used to.
Absolutely.
So that, as well as I learned the hard way, when you're in the operating room, you don't stand there with your knees just kind of, you kind of have to bend your knees a little bit. You don't just stand like just straight up, because after a while, your body's not used to it and you will pass out. These are things that I didn't know until I passed out a couple of times, and I woke up in his office and I'm like, oh my Lord, this man is going to say, this is not for you, sugar. This is just not for you. But he never said it. I woke up and he said, how you feeling? I said, I'm okay. What happened? He said, well, you fell out. I said, okay. And he said, well, let's get back in there.
Oh my goodness. How amazing.
Like, I mean, y'all,
I love him so much.
I love how encouraging
he was amazing.
He is.
He could have said, honey, this isn't for you. This is not your thing.
Or just ignored you and said, I got to do this. I'm in a heart surgery. Sorry you passed out. I got to get on with this. But he's still like, he still nurtured you. He really was deeply nurturing a dream within you right there in that operating room.
Mm-hmm. And, like I said, I fell out at least twice. And, every single time he's like, come on. And that's what I did. And until I finally got the hang of it, and I'm like, well, you know what? This is pretty doggone awesome. You can put somebody on a pump to recirculate their blood while you stop their heart for a certain amount of time to fix something. Like, that is mind blowing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where my initial dream, of now, not only do I want to be a doctor, I want to be a surgeon. I want to be a heart surgeon. Right. And so that's what kind of took me there. And, obviously, and he was older at the time. And of course, now he's retired and hopefully enjoying the fruits of his labor. But that's really how I got my start.
So it automatically leads me into part of your story that I find so absolutely gorgeous. So you mentioned that you were raised predominantly by your grandmother. What was her name?
So her name was Idella, although she went by Della. She was and still is really one of the strongest women I have ever met. You know, she was born in the late 1930s. So, as you can imagine, you know, in Georgia and Alabama, how difficult that was as an African American woman. However, you know, she overcame. She ended up moving to Columbus, Georgia, which is where I was raised. She married a soldier in Fort Benning, Georgia, and that kind of began everything. And that's how my family landed in the Columbus, Georgia area. But I mean, when I tell y'all, this lady could do anything. I mean, absolutely anything from, you know, she would go outside and grill ribs, right? She would barbecue ribs. She would cut the grass. She, you know, she had a garden outside because once again, my grandfather was in the military, so he was gone most of the time. But she did everything. She was a master barber and cosmetologist. She was a school crossing guard. She was the first African American deputy sheriff in Columbus, Georgia.
I love
I
it.
love it.
You've talked to me about, you know, we've been friends for so long. I know a lot of your stories and I treasure your stories. I take them with me. And you've been with me through thick and thin in the hardest times of my life. So thank you, friend. But you know, you've talked to me and it just makes me smile from ear to ear about how you've hit hard times in life and you've hit times like when you're in medical school and you're a single mother and it was so much going on. I mean, I look at it, you look at it and go, how in the world were you doing that? And you said, well, my grandmother could do all the things she did. There was no way that I wasn't going to do it.
You know, it's very interesting too because I went to Tuskegee University for undergrad, and I double majored, did great in school, had a good time in school too, obviously. But between my third and fourth year of undergrad, I had just won Miss Tuskegee, so I was crowned the university's queen.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Oh my
So all
God.
of this had just happened. It was Memorial Day of 2004. And Tuskegee and Columbus are only 45 minutes apart. So I was driving back home early on Memorial Day that morning because my grandma called me and told me I needed to get back home. You know, it was about to be a bad storm. And I'm not going to lie, I had stayed up and partied all night, y'all. I had a blast, absolute blast. So hanging out with my sorority sisters, all the things. And I was driving back home trying to beat the storm. And I fell asleep and ran into a tree.
Oh my God.
I woke up on a backboard.
Uh-uh.
So once again, this was Memorial Day 2004. I was about to start my senior year of college. And through that ordeal, I broke both of my arms. So I had a cast on both arms. I had a huge cut over my eye. I had bruised ribs. Y'all, all the things. Now, I bring this story up only to tell you a little bit more about my grandmother. Because I was slated that summer, keep in mind, we're talking about May. I was slated that summer to go to the Medical College of Georgia for a pre-med program.
Wow.
And you know, you have to do testing, you have to do like all the things, you got to go to class. Keep in mind, we're talking about you know, I have no use of my arms. I'm in a cast in both arms. I can't shower. I can't do anything without assistance. Y'all, my grandmother came with me to Augusta, Georgia for that summer.
Oh my goodness. I love her so much.
Bathed me. We're talking about, how old was I then? I guess 20. Bathed me, cooked for me, all the things that summer. That way I could still do, you know, be a part of that pre-med program. Because keep in mind, at this whole time, I want to be a doctor and I need to do the things that I need to do, you know, preliminarily to make that happen. Y'all, I will never, ever forget that. When I say, you know, let's just talk about humility, right? Because now, like, you're in college and you know, your grandma is wiping your butt. You know, like, y'all, it was, I look back and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I would have done without her.
But I mean, that so speaks to, you know, so seldom do people who have the kind of support you had. Now, you went through a lot with your grandmother raising you. We don't have to necessarily go there, but you went through a lot being with your grandmother instead of your mom. But to have that support, that love, and she, from the stories you've told me, just it's like she gave you injections of courage and how to dream for yourself.
Right, right. And it wasn't just her saying it, it was her showing me. She put
So
action
important.
Yeah,
behind
yeah.
words. And I think that's really one of the most important things, because people can talk until they're blue in the face.
Right.
But if they're not showing you and they're not backing up the things that they're telling you, then it really means nothing.
Yeah.
And she consistently put action behind her words,
Absolutely.
and she always told us how much she believed in us.
But at the same time, I mean, it begs the question. You are in a small southern town that is deeply divided, white and black. I know Columbus, Georgia pretty well.
Hmm.
When did you begin to feel any discrimination because of your color?
I will be honest, and this may sound completely absurd. I never felt it. I never felt it until I got to residency and I realized that I was the first Black female surgery resident that they'd had. And this is in 2010.
That's like the most
So
phenomenal story I've ever heard. And the fact that you went through all of school and you didn't have any racial issues, any discrimination, that's something for
no,
us just to jump up and down and applaud and go, how many stories can we have like
But I
that? I
think
love
it's part of the fact that she had
right.
such a good village around her.
I agree with you.
Like, it sounds like your family and the people that you were around you were so encouraging and so positive that you were in this circle of like we all belong and positive and dreams, that the moment that you went out, that's when you experienced,
Right.
because
Right. That's absolutely right.
you
Because
had so much love and positive that you probably didn't even notice, even if it was happening to you.
That's a very good point.
I think that's probably what it was. I probably just didn't notice it. I was so naive and I was so well taken care of at home, with my mother and my grandmother,
The
that,
power of a
and
grandmother's love, I'm telling you.
yeah, and I mean, they broke so many barriers. It was never like, you can't do this. That was never even a thought, so it was just kind of one of those things. And I'm sure it was there. I just never felt any of the repercussion of it.
Which is absolutely the most phenomenal story. I hope there are a lot more
Right.
like yours.
But I'll tell you what was hard and what has always been hard for me. It's not just the test that you take in the classroom, it's standardized tests, right? So when you have to take the MCAT, the medical college admissions test, when you have to take, these different standardized tests when you're going through your surgery training, those tests were always difficult for me. That is something that I struggle with, you know? And so, I think that because even when I was at Tuskegee, I went to Auburn and took some of the MCAT, pre-admission tests, just to, some of the courses to try to get ready for that test. And I still didn't do good.
Well,
And
I'm
it was
glad there's
so
something that you
frustrating.
didn't do well at, okay? Thank
that's
God
what I'm
there's
saying.
just
I
one little thing. I'm so tired of your success story, Princess. No.
But y'all, it was so hard. It was so hard. And I'm just sitting here, I'm like, now, and I did practice tests and all these things, and it was just so difficult. And I still didn't make great scores, right?
Right.
If you don't make good scores, you cannot get in. It doesn't matter that you had a 4.2 GPA. That does not matter. You have to be able to do well on these standardized tests. And so, once again, for me, that was really a struggle. And so, I finished at Tuskegee, and then I didn't get into med school that first year.
Wow. What
You
did
know,
that do to you? What
well,
happened? You'd never had a setback.
what I did that year was I still went to Meharry, but I did a post baccalaureate program. And it was a year of intense training that you did not get a degree from, but it was okay. If you want it that bad, you're going to have to invest a year. You're going to have to study, and you're going to have to take that test again. and you got to make this particular score. And if you don't, you still can't get in.
Oh, wow.
So,
Was your
yeah,
courage knocked down? Was your confidence knocked down?
it was. It was. But you know what? The thing that pushed me outside of my religious beliefs was that I did not have a plan B. There was nothing else that I wanted to do. So there were no other options. So this is what I have to do. And this is the score I have to make. And if I have to take the test 10 times, I'll just, whenever I become a doctor, I guess I'll be a little older. But that was the only thing that I wanted to do.
So what do you mean this pushed me outside of my religious beliefs?
No, I was saying maybe I misspoke. In addition to my religious beliefs, because you said what kind of kept me going.
Yeah. Oh, in
The two
addition.
things that kept me going were my religious beliefs, right? I believed in God. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. I mean, I did that. I wrote that in calligraphy. I put that on my wall, right? Because I can do anything I put my mind to. This test that I didn't pass doesn't mean I'm not going to pass it in the future. So my religious beliefs, as well as the fact that there was not a plan B, there was not okay, well, I'll go do this if I can't be a doctor. There was nothing else. So that was it. I was just going to do it no matter how long it took.
You're okay with failing. Like, it was okay. It's not like ideal, but yeah, okay,
Right.
I'm going to study more and I'm going to make
Right.
it happen because this is what I want. Because sometimes people just get they allow the failure to really
Put them down.
to put them down, but to become their identity.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
you didn't allow that to happen to you, and it just gave you more gas to be like, nope, I'm going to study better. Just like how you were with your friend in school, and you're like, oh, you did 107? I'm going to study more. I'm going to be better. You have this drive that I love so much. And when you finally got to the test, like, how many times did you have to take that test? That's what I want to know.
So I took the MCAT, I believe, 3 times.
Okay.
And that last time that I took it, which was that year that I was in the post-baccalaureate program at Meharry, I think I had to make like maybe a 25 was the number, and I made a 25.
Woo! What a beautiful and powerful story. The love of a grandmother teaching a young girl to go for broke with her dreams, and the unexpected mentorship, where in this rare story, color and race seem to disappear. Join us next week as we continue with Dr. Princess's story.